friends. Welcome to episode 323 of School Librarians United. I am your host, Amy Herman. This podcast is dedicated to the issues and challenges school librarians face every day. As a school librarian in my 18th year, I knew I wanted a podcast which addressed the nuts and bolts of running a successful library program. I don't claim to have the answers, but I hope that this is a platform to share resources and exchange ideas. Now is a perfect time to mention that all the ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast by myself, my interview guests, and listeners who reach out to the podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. When incorporating research, I always make sure to cite my sources. So whether you are a novice or a veteran school librarian, this podcast has something for you. I welcome you and all listeners to reach out with your feedback and episode suggestions. You can reach me on Bluesky at SLU Podcast or on X, formerly known as Twitter. My handle is at LMS_United. On Facebook, Instagram, and Threads, you can find me at School Librarians United and the email address schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. If you include your mailing address, I'll be sure to send you a podcast sticker. Before we get started, I'd like to extend a special invitation to anyone who learned this week that their proposal for AASL annual conference in St. Louis this October was, in fact, not accepted. As someone who has received a fair share of rejection letters or polite, "we regret to inform you" emails, I will be perfectly candid. Conferences should not be the only place where we showcase the amazing work school librarians do every day. This podcast operates on the premise that school librarians should take the center stage each and every week. And if you receive a rejection email regarding a proposal you've written for an upcoming school librarian conference, be it for local, state, or national level, please know you will always have an invitation to present that very proposal on an upcoming episode. I know full well just how much thought and time goes into preparing a proposal only to learn that it would not, in fact, get a chance to be shared at a conference. I have every confidence that your proposal would be greatly enjoyed and appreciated by our listening audience. Longtime listeners to the show already know that I regularly approach presenters at conferences to upcycle their session as an episode. And I think we can all agree that whenever school librarians pour their heart into creating a presentation, it deserves to be shared and appreciated by fellow school librarians. Be sure to take a look at the FAQs in the show notes of every episode and consider emailing or reaching out to me on social media. Friends, it is now my pleasure to introduce our sponsor to the podcast, Junior Library Guild. What if I told you that there's a collection development service that can save you time and increase title circulation rates? Junior Library Guild does that and more. With their team of professional library media specialists and publishing industry professionals, every title they recommend is vetted for my readers and organized into categories based on reading level and interest. Ultimately, Junior Library Guild helps my students foster a love of reading. Use the code UNITED15 to receive 15 free books in your first shipment. And now for today's episode, Growing Teen Engagement, and my conversation with Jessica Fitzpatrick. Friends, I am so excited. Jessica Fitzpatrick, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Amy. It's great to be back.
Friends, I am so excited. Anytime we get to connect with a former guest who's been on the show, it's been a couple of years, but a lot has been going on with Jess. So, Jess, would you please let us know where in the country you live and a little bit about your library experience, because you've been around for a while.
Yeah. So I've been in education for almost 13 years, and I work a little bit outside of Houston. I have been a librarian in high school and in middle school. So a lot of secondary experience there.
Jess and I met 3 years ago. We are 2 of 6 school librarians who were featured in the School Library Journal's Mover and Shakers for 2022. So Jess, congratulations again. It's this little club of movers and shakers.
Yes. It's great to be a mover and shaker with you.
Well, and I got to be honest, friends, I have it in my email signature because I think that there are some people who need reminding that every once in a while, school librarians get recognized for the things that we do. And while our immediate colleagues may not recognize or appreciate it, it never hurts to put it in our email signature. And friends, I'm just going to say right now, I self-nominated. I self-nominated because you know what? We need to do that. We need to make sure that we create that kind of opportunity to be recognized. And there is no reason why you can't. And there's no reason why you shouldn't. So just put it in your little, put it up there for something to do when it comes to making sure that other people appreciate the amazing work that you do every day. So Jess was profiled as an innovator, mover and shaker. And I've included a link to her article in our show notes. For listeners who are meeting you for the very first time, would you describe for us what was so award-winning and made you an innovator?
So I created a program called Librarian in the Huddle. And it's basically a book club that I created with our football team. And I'm in Texas, and football is everything. And you might not think of football when you think of libraries, but basically, I found sports leadership books, and we created a book club. We would meet every other week, and we would meet, discuss the book, and then do a service project to give back to the community. We would do different things like picking up trash or making dog toys to donate to the animal shelter, or making bracelets to give out to the kids after they get picked up for foster care, things like that. So just little things, and just to kind of build that leadership mentality. And it was very successful, and we spread to a few different sports. We did cheerleading, girls basketball, and boys basketball, and girls soccer. So,
well, and not to spoil anything, but the coaches had a say in what the team read, and you didn't have to pay for this out of your budget.
Correct. Yeah. So the head football coach and I, we sat down, we looked at the books, we looked at what was already in our collection, and then we looked at outside the collection too. And we kind of picked from there, and he bought all the books, and the kids were actually able to keep the book. They had the decision if they didn't want it, they could get it back and we could donate it. But this is for them to keep and to build their own little library. So, yeah.
Well, and friends, definitely take a listen, because I really like to sort of give the spotlight to our movers and shakers, because the things that they do oftentimes are things that if you put your mind to it, these are things that you can, make possible in your space. And listening to somebody like Jess describe the path that she took, obviously this was a great investment on your part emotionally and time-wise. But I love being able to replicate somebody else's award-winning programs someplace else, because we shouldn't monopolize this expertise. And it's in our best interest to shine as much as we can.
Yeah.
So I'm also especially grateful when you agreed to record an episode, which really went into a great deal of detail. I put that in our show notes. It's episode 186, Teaming Up with Athletes. But I also wanted to share, since you and I had that conversation, one of my ELA teachers came to me and said, I've got this idea. I want to create a sports lit class as an elective. And I was sitting there with this big, ridiculous smile on my face, because after having talked to Jess about this, even though I had not really looked into anything about sports lit, both fiction and nonfiction, I felt really confident moving forward. We started making some purchases, really building out this really intentional library for this teacher to use when this class, in this very popular class now. Fast forward, we are still doing sports lit. It's one of our most popular classes. And I have a sports lit collection. And a lot of that has to do with the recommendations and the inspiration that I got from Jess, because this idea that kids love to read about sports, whether it's informational text or fiction. It's really, really popular. So fast forward 3 years, you are a published author. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, and friends, you have to know, when I reach out to ALA Editions, I go through all of their listings. And when I see books that have been written by school librarians, I become sort of a tack dog. I sort of leap and I sort of jump after and say, oh, I've got to reach out. Oh, it's wait, it's Jess. Wait, we've already talked. And they said, do you need her email? I said, no. We've already recorded an episode. We do not, I already have her email. So Jess, give us an idea. What's an elevator pitch? Tell us about your book for those of us who have not sort of stalked you like I have.
So it is called Growing Teen Engagement, and it's a guide that is meant to be practical and inspiring for school librarians who want to connect with secondary learners. So this could be high school or middle school. It's based on AASL standards and offers different actionable strategies and innovative program ideas and real-world collaborations that meet teens' developmental needs. And this is meant to foster creativity, build community, or increase participation. And this book will give you all the tools to do that. It's definitely the book that I wish I had when I was a baby librarian. So...
Well, and I love that because this podcast is the podcast I wish I had when I was a baby librarian.
I second that.
I really would have fixed a lot of problems. I was really struggling. It was not pretty. But I will tell you, friends, I read this book at 30,000 feet while flying to Arizona last weekend, the Memorial Day holiday, to visit my family. And I had 3 solid hours to go through it. And I was like, all right, this is going to I'm so excited to be able to share this with you all. And I posted it yesterday on Bluesky, and I've already heard from one librarian who's doing a study with her school librarians. So I'm so excited because this particular school librarian is really committed to growing teen engagement, and this is the book that they chose. So thank you for obviously supporting a need that is out there.
It's great to hear, too, that they're doing that. That's so, awesome.
Well, and anytime you want to do a book study, it's always a good idea because I'm going to tell you right now, that's professional development. And your administrator absolutely has money to support professional development. And in this case, a book study does not require plane tickets or a hotel room. And, you might get perhaps a half day to do this after you all read the book. It is very cost-effective professional development, especially led by the school librarians who are going to be emotionally and actually invested in making this program successful. So that is the secret of success. Buy books that you know you will be able to implement in your program tomorrow.
Yeah.
So the minute I opened your book, I realized that growing teen engagement is driven by 7 developmental needs that teenagers have, as opposed to what your district mandates are or your state initiatives. This is not about checking off boxes because your state or your district has something that you are required to do and you are solving their problems. This is driven by the developmental needs of teenagers. Can you go into some detail?
Yeah. So exactly. Everything we do, I feel like, is driven sometimes by mandates and state testing and what administrators want. And I really wanted a program or something that could actually help teens thrive, for their need to thrive, what they need to thrive. And by centering these 7 different developmental needs, I wanted to create a framework that truly supports teens as the whole person and not just as a student who's going to go through the school and graduate and leave. And so I really wanted something that supported the whole everything for them.
And I do love looking at this because we're going to go through each of the 7 developmental needs just because I think it does demonstrate how comprehensive your approach was to finding things that would support each of these different learners. And I want to go through each of these just because I think in my head, when I was reading your book, I was like, oh, I know students who would like these activities. I know students who would love these activities. And actually these, there's some of our students are absolutely sort of pigeoned into one particular real strong personality traits that really sort of make it easy for us to sort of try and anticipate how we could help them. But then there are other students for whom I'm like, I think the nice thing about your approach is you try to make sure we are as inclusive as we can in supporting the needs of our students.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of talk about supporting developmental needs with elementary students, but for some reason, as soon as they leave 5th grade, the developmental needs are gone. Like, we don't even think about them anymore. They are there to do what they're supposed to do and get out and not focus on their needs at all. So, yeah.
So, friends, when you only have 6 class periods in the day, like I do in my school, there's very little wiggle room for electives when you are, let's say, college bound. And if you're college bound and you want to take art and you play an instrument, you do choir, but you do want to do workshop or work in woods or metals, or you want to go and take community college classes or online classes, all of a sudden your opportunities are really limited. So I like the idea that the programming you're talking about really allows students to do that without actually registering for a class.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's go ahead and make sure we're talking about, like, when you created some of this programming, what was your vision when it comes to supporting your students? Was this considered passive programming, or would these be activities that your teachers would schedule and plan in advance?
So in the book, we set it up to there are 4 different types of programming. We have active programming, which, you are the one facilitating it and running the show. We have passive programming, which is just something that the students automatically come in and do. We have collaborative programming, or that's basically a lesson that you co-teach with a teacher. And then we have community outreach programming, which is exactly what it sounds like. You're doing something for the community.
Love it. Love it. All right. So let's go ahead and back up and talk about the different areas of the students that you wanted to provide. The first one is creative expression. So let's go into a little bit about what kinds of things went into your mind when it came to supporting our students' need to express themselves creatively.
So I really wanted to focus on the students that weren't necessarily big readers sometimes, that come into the library and they want to make art, they want to make music, they want to just sit in there and create, really. And I really wanted to help that need and grow it. So I created 4 different types of programming. Throughout the book, it's all 4 different. So active, passive, collaborative lessons, and community outreach that focuses on creative expression in the library.
Well, and for me, I got to be honest, I've never had a chance to take an art class after elementary school.
Yeah, me
so
either.
it didn't change the fact that I liked art. Mm-hmm. There just weren't enough hours in the day.
Yep, exactly. I loved art in elementary school, and I personally couldn't take it in high school or middle school. I wanted to do, but I couldn't.
And again, we're going to talk a little bit about how our space is absolutely perfect to support these kinds of needs, but it really does, creating those outlets for our students oftentimes really does allow them to center and reconnect and just sort of remove themselves from the stressors that they face during the day.
Yeah. Exactly.
Another of these developmental needs of our teens is positive social interaction. Okay, so give us an idea of why you wanted to make sure to include positive social interactions and factor that into the programming that you created.
Yeah, so teens need opportunities to build healthy relationships, collaborate with one another, and feel a sense of belonging with other students who they might not necessarily connect with, or the students they do connect with, and then their teachers. And this gives them a chance to do that, have a positive social interaction.
Well, and I don't believe any of the lessons that you included in your book included doom scrolling or being on social media or anything that included a device.
Yep, no TikTok dancing there.
Well, and obviously there's room for TikTok. And I love when teachers use their students in TikToks to promote activities in the Learning Commons and the libraries.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely.
I love anytime we invite the students to remove themselves from that screen. And that seems to be so, especially with our older students. Mm-hmm. They don't walk down the halls without having it sort of right there in front of them. And it's just, it really creates a barrier between them and being able to connect with humans.
Yeah.
point being, I love when we encourage them to engage with their peers. All right, let's talk about another of these developmental needs is structure and clear limits. All of a sudden, I'm looking at every parent book that somebody handed me when I started a family, that we need to create structure and set clear limits when we're raising children. I didn't realize we also needed to do that as educators, and especially when it comes to programming in our library.
Yeah, so teens thrive when they feel secure and respected. They need to be able to have boundaries to explore and have the expectations that, okay, this is what I'm allowed to do, but only within this limits. And it really helps them really thrive if they feel safe and secure in a space to do that.
They want to be set up for success.
Yes, set up for
yes,
success.
They want to be set up for success. And I do know every once in a while, I have teachers who say, hey, you know what, Amy, we're coming down. We're going to do independent rating. I said, okay, what are the criteria? What are the expectations when it comes to you and the book that they're choosing? And the teachers who are very well intentioned say, oh, they can pick whatever they want.
Yeah.
And as the person who works in the library, that really is too big. Like yes. that is too big. And I've had the same response. I take my nephews out and it's called get something at the grocery store because Aunt Amy has to go get something at the grocery store. I said, I'm going to go get something at the grocery store and you're coming with me. So pick whatever you want. And honest to God, they're with me the whole time. And we get to the end and we've gone through the entire store and they don't know what to pick because they want everything. It's like, there's too much. And if I had said, hey, let's go get, let's pick out ice cream or, let's go pick out a box of cereal. And, this is what the Herman kids did when we were growing up. But again, creating parameters for our students we don't want to think that way, but when you think about it, actually it gives them a space for them to succeed.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. How about self-definition? Please tell us why this was so important and you wanted to build it into your programming.
This one for me was one of the most important ones because teens they're exploring who they are. They need a safe space to express their identity, their values, and beliefs without judgment. And this world can be very judgmental. And having a place that they're able to do that is safe would make the world a difference.
Absolutely. And some of that we can also support by the culture that we build in our space. And I know that we're all very intentional in building the kind of culture where all our students feel that they can find space in there for them to thrive and succeed. When I saw that physical activity was something you were going to, I was like, I'm having these flashbacks to when I taught littles. And I talked about library being recessed with heavy wooden furniture. Yeah. I have these littles who come into my library. And at the time, my elementary library had really not been renovated. And so there was a great deal of heavy wooden furniture. Ooh. And then they would start running and moving. And it was like, okay, somebody's going to get hurt. It's like, so trying to keep them sort of in this space. But I mean, we're talking about our big kids now. So why is physical activity important again?
So movement supports mental health and physical health, and active engagement can boost your focus, your mood, and your just overall well-being. This was one that I have used actually quite a lot in the library. Like I've done musical chairs, book tasting, and that is wild with senior boys, let me just tell you. They kind of get to the point where they tackle each other. I'm like, okay, no more, we got to stop. And that's where the structure and clear limits comes in. But this one, they need it. They need to be able to move and not sit still. I am an adult and I can't even sit still. I need to be able to move to learn.
Well, and I do like the idea. I know a lot of us try and incorporate things like stations. Yeah. So when we're doing things, we create these different stations. So it makes the tasks sort of very compartmentalized. And we're like, okay, this station, we're going to do this. And then we're going to do this. But yes, musical book tasting, musical chairs, book tasting. That's right.
Yeah, that was,
yeah. Definitely going to do that next in my library. Yes. Perhaps not in the last 10. Yeah. Not in the last 10 10 days of school, but no. And yes, but I will say, when I was looking at the activities that you were planning, there were quite a few of them that would be absolutely perfect for the end of the school year. Mm-hmm. And so I love that when you created these different programs in your spaces, some of them really could have worked at any period during the school year. Others definitely would be fantastic as things start to wind down, or better yet, when you've got those incoming freshmen and you've got all these kids who are just sort of excited to be there, but they really don't know what anything is when they first walk in the door.
Yes, exactly.
So let's talk about meaningful participation. Can you tell us why this was something that you wanted to make sure was incorporated into the lessons that you put in your book?
Teens want to feel like what they contribute matters. They want to have a voice. They want to have real responsibilities to foster ownership and confidence in themselves. And so that's why I really wanted to make sure that we used that so they can have that feel that what they're doing matters, for a piece of paper to be thrown away, you know?
I'm thinking about my students who like to affect change. Like they definitely want to do good in the world. And I think about a lot of our students who have service requirements, whether it's for National Honor Society or it's for a senior service project. We have senior service project in our school. And, but a lot of times it is about reminding our students about the ability they have to do good in the world. Mm-hmm. And that empowerment, which really hopefully drives what they choose to do as young people and as young adults. Let's talk about competence and achievement, because this sounds a bit academic. And I know that you did a really good job in your book about breaking this down and creating some fun activities. But why is this something that you wanted to make sure to include?
I wanted to make sure that we included this one because I wanted it to be a safe space for learners to be able to try something and maybe fail, but see that in their failing, they're still successful. It gives them a place that they can try something new and not be scared that if they don't do this, they can't get exemptions. It gives them a chance to try something, explore something new, and fail, and that's okay. There is growth in failing, and that's basically what that one is.
I read Angela Duckworth's book, Grit. It is fantastic, and it talks about giving our students a safe space to fail. And they need to know these things when we've got low stakes. When it's low stakes, they need to know that then you try again, and then you try again. And it is making sure you're sort of trying to encourage this grit, this resilience, and this ability to pick yourself up and keep on going, even if there is some struggle. Because I think one of the polite terms I use to describe some individuals I encounter as effort adverse.
I love that.
It's a polite way of saying something that is not very nice, but I do have some students who are effort adverse. And we have to find ways to foster that confidence to be able to do things and know that even if you don't succeed the first time, that you're going to keep on going at it. All right. So, Jess, I mentioned that you are not connecting this with any sort of state. These aren't, you're in Texas. These aren't aligned with Texas state standards or for me, Michigan state standards or even at the local level. But you did tie everything to our AASL standards. And AASL is very glad for that. That's why this is an ALA edition book. I know that you want to make sure. But let me ask you, you explained those connections clearly. And I wanted to make sure that, our listeners outside of the United States feel included, because even though these are tied to AASL or American Association of School Librarian Standards, even our listeners outside of the United States could absolutely find relevance in the activities that you're recommending in your book.
Yes, and that's exactly why I wanted the AASL standards versus any state standards or local standards, because I just wrote an article for some people in Australia, and this gives them a chance to utilize this, because just because it's ASL standards doesn't mean that they can't use it there. The ASL standards, I feel like, are really not just American standards. I feel like it's like a worldwide standard, basically. They're universal, that all librarians really should be kind of following and upholding. If that makes sense.
And a lot of best practice. And when you consider that here in the United States, we can't even agree what we call our workspace.
Yeah.
We can't agree what our title is. I've spoken with some Australian researchers, and they have remarked that doing research that's based in the United States is really challenging because we all have different names for our spaces. We have different job titles. I tell people I'm an information research technology specialist.
Mm-hmm.
And I work in a learning commons. In other words, I'm a librarian, and this is my library. So I've tried to simplify things, but it is not my battle to fight. Mm-hmm. But I do want to make sure that our friends outside the United States know that so many of these activities really sort of go beyond these aren't country specific. These aren't things that are specific to the United States or Texas or Michigan. And fun fact, Australia always leads the international download. So yes, they have been longtime listeners to the show, and I'm big shout out. So, my favorite part of your book, and friends, again, I was, if you can imagine, sitting in economy at 30,000 feet. There is no elbow room, and I'm having these moments reading Jess's book with my highlighters in one hand. I've got my Post-its, and I'm making all these scratches all over the page. But my favorite part of your book is when you explained why the library, or whatever you call your space, is the ideal space to offer these programs to foster and grow teen engagement.
Yes, the library is the heart of the school. And in a lot of high schools, the library might be the only space that all students go to. I know in mine, we have a 9th grade center. So 9th graders are put to a whole different cafeteria, a whole different gym. It's like basically a whole different school, but it's connected, except the library is the only place that everybody can go to. The library is like one of the few spaces where all the students can come together, explore their interest, feel supported without the pressure of grades or assessments. And highlighting the library as the perfect place for developmental programming was something I felt passionate about, because it is the heart of the school. It's the heart of everything, I feel like.
Well, and I think that more importantly, it is a space separate from their classrooms.
Yes.
I oftentimes encourage my teachers to bring their classes down just to disrupt whatever sort of patterns their students have gotten into. Because we have a lot of variety in our space, and everything's on wheels and we can move things around. Also, the expectations of the students, also, at least they don't fall back into those sort of habits that they might have established in a classroom setting. Mm-hmm. And so it is sort of interesting because it throws them off just a little bit.
Yeah.
And no, I absolutely love it, because it is that third space that we can offer to our students. And it is oftentimes the place that they would like to go, sometimes even more than the cafeteria. I have students who really have no interest in actually eating during the day, because they just sort of, it's like a Pop-Tart in their hand, and they sort of walk around and they don't actually sit down but when they are enjoying the company of their friends, they'd rather do it here in the library. By the way, I don't know if I ever mentioned this. I have a dog now in my library. So 4 days a week, I have a therapy dog who comes with me. She is our family dog. Her name is Ellie. She's a corgi. Aww. And if you follow me on social media, you'll see, especially in Bluesky, But this all goes back to Diana Haneski, and she in Florida, she inspired me. Her therapy dog, River, excellent episode. I'll include a link in the show notes. But yeah, when you come to the library, the dog's there too.
Yeah, that would be my drive to the library too.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you right now, we have 10 days left of school, and honestly, I don't care, because my dog comes with me every day, and it really does change everything.
That's amazing. That's so great.
It is very, very fun. Friends, given the 7 different developmental needs of teens that is outlined in this book by Jess, we're going to look at 4 different ways to build that programming. And I love it because there are 7 chapters, and then in each chapter, you break it down by these 4 different activities that you do. Let's start with collaborative activities. And how you implement this into your space to make sure that your students are feeling supported.
I wanted to have different programming to fit whatever best fits that librarian, their space, their time, and their student needs. So with collaborative, it is when you collaborate with another teacher on campus, not necessarily an English teacher. I think I specifically didn't do that within the book because I wanted to think outside of English or history, with a lesson that can be taught in the library or in the classroom, whichever, but I always say in the library because it gets them out of their zone and it brings them to the library. So it's a collaborative lesson.
Well, and I'm going to say right now, I don't care what your evaluation tool is that you are evaluated on. And as somebody who is in the last couple weeks of school, I know right now I am generating and compiling all of my evidence to go into my end of year, profile that I have to submit. And, it is always some of the best evidence that I can give to my administrator for why you need a certified school librarian in the space is the collaborative piece, is when I am supporting instruction in the classroom. And again, when we make those priorities happen in our space, not only does the teacher feel supported, but our administrator can say they're affirmed that having school librarians in their space, we are solidifying for the administrators who evaluate us the value that we bring, because anytime we are seen as supporting instruction in the schools, we are considered more valuable. Enough said.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and talk about the active lessons.
So with active programming, that is where you as a librarian are running the programming. It's hands-on, engaging activities that require the direct learner's participation. These programs help the learner be creative, move, and solve problems in different ways.
And these are obviously ones that, unlike our next category, passive. So these would be done in the library, and you would be setting up. And let me ask, do you have a dedicated space in your library? In this case, would you be working with students during a class period, or could you be doing some of these before school or after school or during lunch?
Most of my active programming was open to all students. It could be during advisory where students can get a pass because we had school-wide advisory at the same time, before school, after school, or during lunches as well.
Perfect. All right. And I love passive programming. Friends, we've got some episodes dedicated to passive programming. Give us an idea. What are some of the things that you found to be really helpful when it came to building those passive activities that you offered in your space?
Yeah, they're low pressure and the student is able to self-direct those activities to engage on their own time. They're great for quieter students who might not necessarily want to interact with other people or those with limited availability. I always allowed my passive programming to be able to be taken out of the library if needed, because they're doing it at their own time. That's what works for them,
My episode that comes out tomorrow, the librarian, and this is a Michigan librarian, Rebecca Lowe, talks about a take and make. And as in take and make, meaning you are taking this with you and making it someplace else. And I absolutely love that, because there is a distinction, because there are oftentimes we offer programs where, if it involves games or cards or, art supplies, those have to stay with us here in the space. And, it doesn't help with our students who are booked for all class periods and they just don't have the opportunity to take an hour off of their day.
Yeah, exactly.
And then community community outreach, I sort of equate this with our National Honor Society and their service hour requirement. Last time I checked, it's 40 hours. And I love the idea of the library and the librarian having activities for which the students, it gets them thinking about service outside of a requirement. So again, so many of our students will do community service as a part of a requirement to satisfy for, or an organization.
Yeah. So with community outreach, I wanted a program that connects students to their world and their community, to have them focus on empathy and civic engagement and service. I am very big with community service and giving back to the community. And I wanted the library to have kind of the place to open it up to not just the Honor Society students, because you have to qualify sometimes to be part of these honor societies, and it's not open to everybody. And the library to be open up to everybody who just want to give back to the community that they serve.
Awesome. As I was enjoying your book, I was doing my own little mental checklist I was like, how many of these things can I do tomorrow? But I also realized when I was reading some of the activities that you're recommending that I could answer the questions better because I am now in my 4th year in my building. When I started my first year in my high school, my understanding of what was being offered in my school was very limited because I had walked in the door and I was just figuring out my new job. I barely knew how the space I ran was supposed to run, let alone what other programs were happening, what other clubs existed. I didn't know what our social worker was doing. I didn't know what our clubs, what our clubs were doing for the community. And it seems to me that a lot of what you were talking about in your book required us to also take stake and be familiar with the current offerings of our school so as not to overlap or reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. So I wanted to make sure that the things in the book you were able to take action on. It could be something you can immediately walk away and kind of start doing. And by being aware of what the current offerings are in your school, in your library, you can find meaningful ways to collaborate and fill the gaps and add value rather than just duplicating the efforts and teaming up with people who are doing that to grow it and make it better. Like you said, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're just doing more like thoughtful alignment to enhance programs to be more impactful.
Well, and that's what I wrote. I was taking notes in sitting there in my airplane seat, sort of. And I actually picked the middle seat on purpose because if you sit in the middle seat, you're trapped. and I just sit there and I've got 3 hours to read this book. And one of the things I wrote was, enhance versus replicate. Like I wrote that in my notes. I was like, because the school librarian can, in supporting teen engagement, we can enhance something that is currently ongoing in our space. And in this way, we can make it better and sort of join forces, so to speak, with a club advisor or with a grade level teacher or a sponsor of a group that you have in your school and say, listen, I'd like to be able to do this. And part of what I can do can support the things that you are already doing.
Exactly.
Oh, I think that's fantastic. So I'm so excited. You've written this book and, I'm very excited to see how it takes off. I love that it also has a lot of applicability to our middle grades and so forth. So Jess, you've written a book now and I'm just curious, that's got to be something that was on your, bucket list as a professional.
Yes, it was. That's exactly, I think ever since I was a kid, I said I wanted to write a book and this was it. So Yeah.
Oh, well, congratulations. So, Jess, I have to ask you because we are coming up on summer. Summer for me means June. And sorry, Australia. But yes, we are coming up on summer and there are conferences happening. And I know listeners are curious to know, are you going to be at a library conference in the coming months?
In October, I will be at ASL, so I will be there.
I will see you in St. Louis.
Yay, that'd be fun.
Excellent. So, Jess, would you let us know should there be somebody who'd like to reach out to you or follow you on social media? I know we've had to reevaluate where we are given the current political climate, but do you have a presence in social media?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, but I'm going to create a Bluesky after this. But on Instagram, I am at Librarian Fitz, Fitz. So
fantastic. And friends, be sure to check out the show notes for all the links that we've mentioned today. Every time Jess and I connect, I learn so much. And I'll tell you what, it has really made a difference for me. I know when I took my job as a high school librarian, Jess was one of the people who really gave me some confidence that I could sort of tackle many of the sort of projects and undertakings that she had talked about in our first conversation. And again, sometimes that confidence is really what you need to get started. Jess, have a fantastic couple of weeks. You're going into summer, and I will see you in St. Louis.
Yeah, I'll see you in St. Louis. Have a great 10 days of school.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Have a good one, Jess.
Okay, thank you.
Friends, if you found this episode helpful, please share it out with your team, your PLN, and on social media. Be sure to follow on your favorite podcatcher so you'll never miss an episode. And if you really like listening today, consider leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews help others find us. I hope you take a look at the link to Junior Library Guild in our show notes. Use the code UNITED15 and receive 15 free books with your first shipment. The topic of our next episode is Unlock College Success, and my conversation with Lisa Seymour and Amy Armbruster. I hope you will tune in.